if your business has not gone digital yet, it will.
Welcome at this episode of Open Up Digitals, with this episode Dr. Cara Antoine. The way in which we work is changing rapidly because of the digital transformation of our workplace and because of all technological possibilities. And because of Corona, this change has even accelerated. Now, how should companies deal with all these new challenges? And how can employees stay in touch and stay involved? And how can we do things differently or even better? We talk about this with Dr. Cara Antoine, chairwoman of the Executive Advisory Board of Women in Tech. Cara, welcome, and what a great pleasure it is for me to interview a fellow advisory board member of the Women in Tech. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
It's my sincere pleasure, Lika. Thank you very much for your invitation to talk today.
You're welcome. Listen, people talk about the future of work and about the changes in the way that we work. And until recently, this was mainly about the digital transformation of the workplace. But now certainly Corona has have had a large influence on this process. What things do you see have gotten into gear through this Corona?
Right, so that's a great question, and indeed we're living in unprecedented times right now, Lika, as we've all globally gone through not only this pandemic, but many other worldly complex issues to deal with. And the first thing I would say is if your business has not gone digital yet, it will. So I think that most companies globally will become tech companies. They will become tech enabled and tech empowered. On one side, so I talk about the technology, and on the other, I don't want to forget that great voices like what we hear from Forbes and other companies are reminding us that right now, considering particularly this pandemic that we have been going through and we're still going through, it is more important to be more human than ever and to put compassion in the middle. So while I love to have this conversation also about digital technologies, transformation, the impact of the pandemic on the world, and how we can solve for some of these greatest and most complex problems, I don't want to forget that we keep people at the heart of all we discuss and that all we do, because that's how I think we're going to see ourselves through this pandemic at the end of the day as well.
Oh, well, that's very, very nice thought indeed. Well, Corona, like you said, is changing a lot of things technologically, but also in the way that we interact as humans. We try to survive and we try to deal with this new reality. We work at home, we interact differently, of course, we communicate digitally. What current developments do you see that will also be permanent, even after Corona? Also, like you said, digitally, but also in the way we communicate with each other.
Yeah, so I believe strongly in the fact that a lot of companies are going through the process of digitalization, and certainly, you know, so if you look at the, I would say a short definition of, you know, what do we mean about being digital, and really thinking about the convergence of digital technologies, of multiple technologies that will really help us to innovate, that are enabled by connectivity. So how are we connecting differently? However, where I'd like to move the conversation actually is in the transformation that is enabled by these digital technologies. And what this really means is that we are changing our organization. We're changing the way we make money as organizations because of the empowerment of those digital technologies and the innovation we can bring that will help us significantly improve performance and ultimately, more than delight, but actually exceed the expectations of our customers. And we need to think about the transformation of our businesses and those business models. And what I've seen is that if you think about the digital models that we have today, the business models, we have subscription models. So, you know, where you sign up and you regularly get something every time in return. You have a freemium model where effectively you can get services for up to a certain point, but at some point you have to start to pay. You think about the experience models. So premium brands that offer a delightful experience to their customers. And then the fourth area in terms of digital business models is really the platform model. And where I feel we're actually evolving to right now is in the platform space. And in terms of platform, this is where we're bringing communities and ecosystems together. And it's a very transformative way of exchanging supply and demand. And I think it's creating now new sources of supply and demand like we have never seen before. And there's some great examples that we all are very familiar with, like Uber or Airbnb. And also, even for us, as you and I are sharing this delight at Women in Tech, we are also moving towards being a platform organization, and one which is really looking at maximizing the power of the community and the ecosystems that we can build.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very happy about the heads up about the Women in Tech, because I wanted to ask you, you're the chairwoman of the Women in Tech, and you believe in an inclusive world where everybody can participate, and all people, especially women, have the possibility to shine. Can you tell us a little bit about this Women in Tech, what it is, what you do, and how Corona influences that?
Absolutely. So I'm very proud to be the president for Women in Tech in the Netherlands. Women in Tech, of course, is founded by the beautiful and brilliant Ayumi Aoki Moore, who has founded the organization nearly 2 years ago out of Paris in France. And we are on a mission. And that mission is, of course, to close the gap in terms of gender equality for women in technology. I think today we don't need to argue the fact that we don't have enough women in technology. You know, when I came to the Netherlands 18 years ago, the numbers at that time were something around 18% of women represented in technology roles. And unfortunately, even still today, now 18 years later, that bar has not moved all that much further here in the Netherlands. So we're somewhere in the low 20 percentile where it comes to having women in technology. And so for me, and this mission that you and I, or many of us, are on, is about helping to close the gap and really empowering women, helping them to find their confidence and the excitement to embrace a career or a course of study for girls or women of all ages in technology. And that's the mission that we're on. We're very empowered by the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and looking at how we put women in the center of all we do. We're really looking at the empowerment of social inclusion, education, innovation in science, and also entrepreneurialism as the areas where we will have the biggest impact in these next 10 years.
Okay, and if you look at Corona, what does that do for women especially?
I think one thing that we have seen is certainly it has driven women towards community. So one thing that we have seen is sort of that hockey stick effect, if you will, of more women that really want to get engaged with other like-minded women, looking for a source of community, a source of inspiration. And so what we have found is simply the numbers within the community have exponentially grown. We have more than 27,000 women around the world connected on the global platform today. And here in the Netherlands, well over 2,000 members of this community. And what I think we're finding is that we're able to excite women and find new ways to connect with them that are helping to accelerate their development and empower them in the space of technology. So Corona has, in fact, in a certain way, brought us all much more closely together, and it has given us a much broader reach. So if I would think about the in-person events and community workshops that we've been running here in the Netherlands prior to the Corona crisis, maybe we had 30, 50, 100 people at a time coming up and showing up in Amsterdam or in Eindhoven and different places in the Netherlands. Today, when we're running a live stream on LinkedIn or on YouTube, we're getting more than 8,000, 10,000 views of those particular sessions. And so it has dramatically and exponentially increased the number of participants that we can get to get their own source of inspiration out of the topics that we're bringing onto the table.
Yeah, we're going really rocket high right now. It's amazing what it does. But you talked about communities, about platforms, about the human touch. But looking at this digital transformation, you were a formal director marketing and operations for Microsoft. You were responsible for the digital transformation itself. Now you see this process sweeping through industries and creating new opportunities for organizations to engage with customers in a different way and to drive this innovation and boost the competitiveness. What influence exactly of Corona do you see on this digital transformation, apart from what you already said about the communities and the platforms, of course, being very important?
Some of the influences of Corona and something I think that we need to be very aware of is that we don't allow this crisis to create yet another crisis. And what I mean by that is the inequities that I see emerging because of Corona, and something that we need to look at how technology can enable and empower us to move beyond some of the current inequities that we're seeing coming up. And those inequities are in the space of, well, number one, women. Why women? Because we do know that women are the majority of small business owners. And unfortunately, in this time, we have recognized very quickly that for small business owners, and predominantly women, they lack the skills, the digital skills, to know how to move their business online. And it, again, is not just about digitizing a way you did your business by putting it online. That is one step you can take, and that's a change you can make. Sort of like if I give you the equivalent of when a snake loses its skin, well, it's still a snake, but it has changed. When you're really looking at the transformation, you're talking about when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. And so what we want is these small businesses, these caterpillars, to become butterflies. We want them to learn how to make money differently and to move their business models online. And so women need to get the skills to learn how to move their business and to find new ways of making money through their business, through their craft, through their talent, through a digitized world. That's one area. Another area that I would suggest that we need to be careful is not creating more inequity is simply in the accessibility of technology. And what I mean by that is, number one, not every household is equipped to have a computer for every person in that household. We have suddenly seen the need to have children with parents, everyone at home doing school, doing work, and not everyone had their own computer. And so we have seen communities stepping up and offering computers to families that needed more computers at home. And the other side of the hardware equation is the software side, which is also thinking about the actual connectivity. So Wi-Fi, broadband, and now 5G, which is coming to the market quickly. Not every community, and you can even think of what you might consider to be the most progressive communities, have great Wi-Fi. And so it's very important for us from a technology lens to look at how we are equalizing the world in its connectivity to technology and to the connections that we need. And that needs to be a global opportunity, what I call right now the digital divide, which is that those that are and lucky enough to have the computing, the hardware and the software, the connectivity and the Wi-Fi, versus those that are not equipped, are starting to create an even bigger divide in those communities because of the lack of access in that space.
I completely understand. It's a big task there for us as a community, as a world, to get everybody on board. Now you talked about the butterfly idea and the caterpillar, the change that has to be made. Now the small entrepreneurs have to do that for themselves, but can you give any advice to companies how they can help their employees make a change in their mindset?
Yes, indeed. And this transformation mindset, in fact, it needs to start with the CEO. This is something we can't just simply delegate and say, oh, the rest of the organization will figure this out. So actually the change, this transformation of going from the caterpillar to the butterfly, that starts with the CEO, and the CEO needs to have a digital mindset. In fact, I recently saw a statistic that told us that only 2% of businesses in the European economy have embraced transformation in the digital era. So if you can imagine the companies that are going through doing incremental changes, they may be tweaking something here or changing something there. That's all okay. That's great, actually. It's making maybe small forward steps in progress. But what will happen very quickly is that the disruption, the digital disruption, will impact these companies where they will not be able to transform themselves. Sometimes you need to disrupt yourselves in order to avoid being disrupted by others. And so I think the first thing that companies need to do, and in working with their employees, is do a health check and really understand what your capabilities are and the gaps that you have in terms of your transformational capabilities, your strategic capabilities, your risk assessments, where you are on that range of, could we be potentially disrupted, or are we a disruptor? Do we need to take an offensive or defensive strategy here? And then start to think about, what is your strategy? You want to start with how is it that we can delight and exceed the expectations of our customers? Do we know who our customers are? And think about your business strategy. And that needs to be a very holistic strategy, where at the very end of that, you can finally say, and then there are those technological solutions that we can consider in order to supply that strategy. And of course, to underpin all of that, it's taking your people along in the journey and bringing them through the cultural change and ensuring that they have the skills, whether it requires some reskilling or upskilling. I personally just went through a re-accreditation myself by putting myself back through an online course for BTM2, which is the Business Transformation Management Methodology. And I'm very proud to have been able to refresh my own skills, and using a little bit of the extra time I have on my hands right now to refresh my own skill set. And I think that is an example, but for any area or industry that you're in, as a person and as an organization, to be aware of how you, your job, your organization, your industry may be disrupted, and then try to acquire the skills to stay ahead and in fact be the disruptor yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. Actually, with this answer and the last sentences, you already more or less answered my last question. What advice could you give to the viewers? Which steps should they take first right now? Well, educate yourself, use your time wisely. Anything to add?
Yeah, I'm looking for the positive moments that we can actually learn from this pandemic that we are all going through. And so I'm looking for the opportunity to say, we've been through, I think in many countries, wave one. And, recently I talked with the CEO, Lika, who shared with me that if he had given a strategy to his team to say, what's it going to take for us to become a remote working organization, that, they would have hired external consultants. They would have spent 5 months to develop a strategy, and probably the next 6 or 7 months to implement that strategy. And he said, look, in 10 days, we had more than 30,000 people working remotely and online. I think in this time, the one thing I would ask people to do is, have an agile mindset, have a digital mindset, and look beyond the things that you may think that are impossible, because we've already demonstrated that it's not all impossible. And so I'd like to look at what is it we have learned from this. Let's not create a new crisis out of a current crisis. And let's learn from what we've already learned, because if a wave 2 or 3 comes on, we don't know how long this pandemic will last. We need to continually evolve and take forward steps. I like to say onwards and upwards, and look for the positive in how we can continue to evolve as a society.
Onward and upward. Thank you very much, Dr. Cara Antoine, for your elaborate answers to the things we discussed. Thank you very much for the time you took. I hope you have a great day, and thanks to the viewers for watching this episode of Open Up Digitals, and there's more, so stay tuned.
Thank you.